whatever. Hi, Dolores. How are you? I see you on Facebook. I don't know if you're on YouTube quite yet. Facebook seems to be adding sound effects that weren't there before when I tried to share. Nope, not that time.
We are probably sharing to some of the same groups, I'm betting, but that's okay. Still more people will see it probably. The way that works, I don't know.
I don't know if we do share to the same groups. We might.
We might. Well, for example, I'm wondering, anyway. That's all good. We probably.
My husband's sharing it with our group.
Have we shared to your group yet?
I shared it to the Bernie Kratz. That's one of our groups, and I can keep sharing it out.
And I shared it to Red Berets page and Red Berets group and Whole Washington Volunteers and Indivisible Tacoma. I don't know, just a few. Trying to look for some other healthcare ones.
Yeah, but they're good groups, aren't they? I'm just sharing it to bees right now. You'd be surprised how many bees are not really bees.
Oh, I'll share it to one payer states.
Oh, good idea.
So is the clock that's ticking down, is that when we go live?
I think we are live, baby.
We are live. Yes,
Okay.
but just all we've been doing is sharing.
Okay.
But now, I think we've done enough sharing, at least to get started. So, I'm going to remove the promo and give us our full screen back. And now we can start. So this is the In-Depth Show. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. And my guest co-host for tonight is Laura Fielding of the Red Berets. And our guests are Leah Perkel from Whole Washington and Rhonda Walker from Whole Washington as well. And Leah, Kay, and Rhonda are putting together a fantastic event on November 19th. And our main purpose here tonight is to discuss this event and everything that goes into it, and really to I suppose in a way it's kind of an advertisement for the event. I hope so. So, who would like to start?
Rhonda can start.
Okay.
You want me to talk about the event?
Washington is a part of who we are at our molecular level. But we come in as representing other groups, and whole Washington just being like a big catalyst of what we do. Originally and always will be the Washington Bernicrats Coalition. And we became a chapter of Our Revolution. We were at Our Revolution Washington for a few years, and then we've now decided to kind of burst out of that name and are now really organizing underneath Future to Believe in, with whole Washington being like a major player in what we get behind. So that's part of it, why we're here today. I'm in Southwest Washington, originally from Vancouver, Washington, where Leah is. I'm in Longview, just a little bit up north of her, but we organize in Southwest Washington together. I'm very lucky to have Leah and her hubby.
I'm sure you are.
They are freaking amazing. Organizers and just very vocal and non-apologetic for what the people need down here.
That's very important.
Yeah. So we are looking forward to it's kind of a 2-day event coming up in November. So on
Friday, November 19th.
The 19th. We will be getting together to do a protest of sorts, and inviting a circle of knitters to come join us, because we want people out there kind of maybe doing a circle of knitting our red berets while others are out there demanding what we need. And then we have Scott Dissenoy. Oh, I don't say his last name very well. Dissenoyer.
Denoyer.
Thank you,
Denoyer. Yeah.
Denoyer.
I was saying it that way for a long time too. I probably confused a lot of people.
Right. It's okay. It's Laura's fault. That's all I'm going.
Yes.
No. Was really wanting to do a vigil for those who have lost their lives because of our lack of healthcare in this country. So that'll be following right after that. And then Saturday.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
Does anybody have any estimates of how many people?
We do not know yet, because we'll be posting the event in the next couple days on the whole Washington website.
Yes, but I'm not talking about how many people are going to come to the event. I mean, how many people have died but due to lack of health insurance? I'm over saying the last 10 years or so. But does anybody have any estimates about that?
I think the estimate is like 30,000 something a year here in Washington State.
That sounds about right.
Is that? No, maybe not.
Maybe it's a little shy.
I think that's a little. Well, I think that that's probably nationwide.
Numbers are wrong. Right. Yes, that's more nationwide.
And it could be up to. I usually use probably the top end figure that people say, which is about 68,000 a year. So it's if you want a person want to be safe side, I think it would be somewhere between 30 and 68,000 every single year in the United States. And Scott has a really in the here and now today kind of way that he portrays it for us to think about. And it's actually like 114 or 112 people per day. Like just today, like over 100 people dead.
112 people in Washington?
No.
112 people in the country.
In the country is my understanding of it. Yes.
I think that's probably increased since COVID.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yes, I think it's probably
a very conservative number. Yeah.
COVID. There's a number that comes out of just a few pieces of research on this subject. There haven't been really too many articles on this subject, but if you have some statistic for all of the uninsured people, okay, in Washington. There's a ratio of 1 out of 700, okay, in 81 that are likely to be fatality. So you divide the number of uninsured by 700, okay, in 81. And that's kind of a loose average of a number of research studies, okay, that have been done on that. I doubt that's a reliable figure since COVID started, though. I'm pretty sure COVID, knocks that one out of a cocked hat. But that was probably a good figure up until that time.
Yeah, that's true. We're running the numbers again to be ready for this event. So we're gonna have a lot of visuals with the actual numbers of people who are uninsured and others who have died because of being underinsured or no insurance at all. So we'll get those numbers that we have research really digging into that right now. So I'm sorry we didn't have the numbers coming in, but we will have them by the event time. And before we'll be sharing that out because we really want to show, really the mass effect that is going on here, and to not have true health coverage for everybody during a pandemic is just criminal. I mean, it just is criminal. I'll let Leah go into more in depth with the events, but on finish up with Saturday, we're going to be getting back together and do an action. We're going to canvas. John Culver, who is here in Washington, is part of our group, put together an amazing app. And instead of giving all of our data to the Dem party, like we've been using, Van, we're going to be really focusing on really collecting our own throughout Washington state.
Oh, that'll be wonderful.
Yep, he even created a QR code for us as well.
Yeah, to send people there. So we got a bunch of coalition building here in Washington state has been amazing. We've got the People's Party of Washington State, the Progressive Party of Washington, the Black Panthers Party, White Panthers Party, a bunch of other groups are coming together, and we're all going to be working in tandem into creating this third realm of organizing, those truly from the grassroots, get rid of the top, down structure that everybody's trying to do and really stay focused on that. And building that power that we all have, but really, consolidating and coming out as one big, for the people movement.
Yeah, that sounds like you have real solidarity there.
Oh, we do. And that's,
the first thing I thought of when you started telling me that.
Yeah, a bunch of party groups, we all work together, and also just, even single focused, advocacy groups. I mean, we've been building, we started in 2016, and but only been building those relationships ever since. So we just haven't come out as strong as one because we've all been building up in our perspective areas, but everybody is gung-ho and ready to do that now. So I think they're really going to be able to see the power that the grassroots in Washington state really do have. Like we talked about earlier, Joe, everybody thinks Washington's a very progressive state. And we try to tell people that it's really not. We really are a neoliberal state who talks progressive. But if you look at a lot of our legislation that goes through, it doesn't necessarily help the people. It's very much aligned with special interests of our legislators.
Which is unfortunate.
Right.
So where does the reputation come from that Washington is so progressive?
Marijuana, probably.
And LGBTQ rights. We got 2 of those initiatives passed through that are progressive. We were one of the earlier states to pass legalized marijuana.
Like I said, we talk a good talk. We have Jay Inslee, who says he's this climate warrior. Little beknownst to us, we didn't realize that until he told us when he was running for president that he was such a, climate warrior. But apparently we do. But no, again, it's a lot of lip service here, and a lot of special interest. Pharmacy, insurance money, all that. military money. There's a lot of military here, and that's,
Yeah, a lot of military and Boeing, of course.
and Boeing. Yeah.
And Microsoft.
So it's
Yes,
lit for this.
I know there's Microsoft, but of course,
And
I
Amazon.
really remember when Boeing took over the state.
Yes, correct.
Going back.
Yeah, and they've actually moved a lot of their jobs out of the state, unfortunately.
To China, you mean?
No, to the southern states. I think they moved some of the jobs like down to Alabama.
Yes, I know some of the jobs have gone down there.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
How big an employer, though, is Boeing in Washington now?
I don't think it's as big as it used to be. I think Amazon's bigger than.
Oh, I'm sure Amazon's
Yeah.
big. Yes.
Yeah, because they're working. Yeah, they're talking about building a warehouse down here in Clark County.
Boeing is still big, though. It
is big, but it's kind of neck and neck right now.
Can I break in for a second and give
Sure.
us a lens through which for Leah to talk about where she comes in with this? Would that be okay, Joe?
It's okay with me, sure.
Okay. Because if we go back to the first couple of times that Kenny Ballantyne came up to Washington State and basically took an interest in whole Washington and loosely the creativity of the Red Berets that were knitting and organizing locally in Washington State for our coalition partners, and also trying to work alongside whole Washington to press into the national narrative as we're pushing all of us simultaneously always towards national improved Medicare for all.
Of course.
This was kind of the, we'd have to hear it in Kenny's own words, and I'm sure we will, at some point, what it was about that interview with Ryan Knight that hurt. But it seems to me that he heard a lot of energy and a lot of grassroots, like authenticity and activism. Like this is where there's real stuff happening, and this seems like a creative angle. And that was, the reaching out to us to do the documentary. And so on his first trip up here, it was important to bring in, I don't know unless I sat and listed all even the people, but we brought in kind of these core, and there's so many more. Like there were more people. I would love in terms of Washington State, there could have been even more. But on that first trip, he came to Tacoma and he filmed that action that people have seen the footage from of us protesting Representative Kilmer to demand he co-sponsor Rep. Jayapal's 1976 for Medicare for all. And of course, Rhonda and Leah and some of the folks from Vancouver, they often make this journey all the way up either to Tacoma or up to Seattle. And so they came up for that event in solidarity. And then they stayed around for kind of a separate part of it. So part of it was that direct action. And the other part was Kenny Ballantyne getting their interviews. And so when Leah talks, maybe she'll talk about the story that she and Steve have that they've shared. That's if you want to, Leah. I'm not telling you to do that.
I'm happy to share.
But so this is the part that Kenny interviewed Leah and Steve that weekend. And he also, of course, wanted to make sure that he interviewed Rhonda Walker because, again, chair of Washington Bernie Kratz, now a future to believe in. She was one of the very first activists who I connected with and who, like, I was just like swimming in. Oh, I like these. I want to knit. I see all these pink hats, but I believe in Bernie's policies. What am I, so once I got kind of connected up, Rhonda was one of these core people. So that's why, of course, she was another person who was interviewed that first weekend. And now in the wake of us needing another separate and difficult issue of the suspension of the gathering of signatures of 1362 for whole Washington. But that board made that decision. And then with Kenny's recent trip when he came up here, the whole plan was for him to get footage of us gathering signatures.
Yes.
But we had to make a different plan for that trip. And we had to kind of turn on a dime. So we did some of that footage of the healthcare justice panel that you'll all have seen and all of that. And then
the
strategy panel, and then a local action here in Hilltop. And then my next thoughts were, since the Vancouver people are always coming up and coming out to, because all the action, love March for Medicare for All Seattle, and all the things, that's where this large progressive voting bloc are. And we all understand that. But it's kind of like, what could we do now that there is no longer, that we've made the decision to suspend the signature gathering? What are we going to do to kind of help bring some more footage and some more direct actions that we actually need to do? So it's not all about the documentary, but it's also about what can we do to help him complete this process, because he's gotten a lot of amazing footage. And we all know that we need to demand this hearing. So this was kind of the thought process of reaching out to Leah and Rhonda and saying, can you please spearhead something? And then this way, Kenny can come up to Vancouver. We can all travel to you. You can get out local constituents. And we need to we really need to try to show Tacoma up and make some real noise. And let's invite Scott Denoyer, because he's such a solidarity champion.
He is.
And this is the kind of thing that Kenny is really portraying and fostering, as I see it so far, and through the communications and collaborations that we have with him. I think this is the vision that he's understanding, is that we need all this solidarity. So how brilliant, and you'll be hearing more, not in this live stream because there's so much that we need to talk about, but there's going to be, the March for Medicare for All protesting Pelosi demanding a hearing. So how neat that we're going to have these two parallel streams of Kenny recording us making demands on Pelosi, and there's a whole list of demands, and that's end of October. And then he's going to come up to Vancouver and get us protesting, demanding this hearing of Senator Cleveland. Because what I keep saying to people is, despite all these different arguments for a fight on all fronts, which, by the way, is the whole Washington Bernie-crats, that's been what has been modeled to me throughout the early years once I first got involved. So that's not something I thought of. That's something we do in Washington State that I've learned from other organizers. And so anyway, we need hearings. So how neat, because we're demanding national, we're demanding state. People should be absolutely outraged that they aren't getting hearings in every single state and nationally. So this is the thing, is if we get to demonstrate this through the documentary, that if you have state legislation, you should be out demanding it. That's what we're doing. Hey, Pelosi, you should be doing national hearings. So I just kind of wanted to frame these important actions. And whole Washington, obviously, we very much cannot afford just to let the rest of the year go by without doing these actions, without keeping our volunteers busy growing and hopefully bringing some press attention to this.
Sure.
This absolutely has to get very serious. This is an absolute travesty and I'm turning this over to you, Leah. I'm sorry. I wanted to give that big backdrop because I do think, that is important. That was the catalyst, those two things, the suspension of the signature gathering and wanting to sort of give Kenny something, what is pertinent now in Washington State for whole Washington, because it's not signature gathering, but what do we need to be doing? Well, we have active legislation still, and this is not going to just sit and be okay. not when the 49th LD Dems have endorsed whole Washington.
Yes.
So there we go.
Yes. So we'll have another opportunity in January for Senator Cleveland to give it a hearing. So it's more than appropriate to have our big event in November, right before they go back into session. She was actually in our meeting when we overwhelmingly voted to endorse whole Washington. So that was incredible that we all stood together. It proved to me that we do have progressives down here in the 49th, and we do have enough people that want to stand up against her. And as somebody who was talking to voters and doing signature gathering, people were just in awe that our state senator here doesn't support universal health care. They're like, really? I mean, so apparently she doesn't know her voters, which is unfortunate. So that's why I want to put pressure on her to at least let people know that she does have the opportunity to give it a hearing. So that's why we're going to be kicking off our event on November 19th. We're probably going to have it at Esther Short Park, since unfortunately our state senator doesn't have an office down here due to COVID. So we're going to get as many people as possible. So we'll start it off on Friday at around 2:30. We're going to get as many people. I'm going to try to get as much press down here so that we're loud and noisy. And so she hears us, because she's already heard a lot of us, but we need more voices to come together on this and put pressure on her. I don't know if it'll move her, but we at least have to try. And then,
yes, of course.
Yeah, she needs to know that her voters strongly support universal health care. I've walked my doors in my precinct. People on Medicare here support universal health care. So it's not just people that don't have health care. So we'll kick it off on November 19th. Then we'll start the vigil at 4:30, where people will be able to share their stories. And that's where it's Denny, right? Oh, no, Scott. And Scott will get to share his story. We're going to have candles and everything. And then Saturday, I want to get out and knock on door, get the community involved and get people ready to fight for universal health care down here, because it's very important to me. And the reason it's important to me is because me and my husband currently don't have health care. As Laura knows, 2.5 years ago, my husband had a quadruple bypass because he had 2 heart attacks. And we had what was considered the Affordable Care Act. We had insurance. We were paying into it. And unfortunately, insurance company can deny paying the cost of, the hospital visit.
Yes.
So out of $135,000 bill, they paid $5,000.
Oh my God.
So we are paying off $130,000. My husband will be about 80 by the time we have it paid off. We also are paying off a $3,000 ambulance bill, because unfortunately most people don't know this, but a lot of ambulances are not included in the hospital services. They're a separate entity. And that's why I really support whole Washington, because that would cover those ambulances expenses. So we had to pay a $3,000 bill that we're paying off to get them from one hospital to another, because unfortunately we're limited on how many hospitals down here in our area that actually do open heart surgery, which is unfortunate. So I'm not only fighting for myself, but I'm fighting for everybody that I know and love, and people I don't know, because there are so many people here that don't have single payer, or they're underinsured. And I feel like now is a really important time with COVID, because there's so many people that probably didn't go to the doctors or the hospital because they didn't have insurance. So
I'm sure that's true.
I mean, how many people do we know that probably died because they didn't go? So that's why I'm fighting, why we're doing this event down here, to finish the documentary. So, and I truly feel that the community down here is ready for it, and the state of Washington is ready for it.
Okay, tell me more about how the vigil is going to work.
So Laura can talk a little bit more about that, because I believe Scott's going to be talking, and then once you explain what you envision.
Well, what I had envisioned, I well, how long? It's been a few weeks back since I reached out. At least I don't. Do you remember what? And anyway, that doesn't matter. When we sort of had these right after Kenny came up the last time, yeah, um, and I reached out to Leah to say I would really love you to head this up. I started thinking. It's so interesting. I'm going to try not to get aggravated, but I never was looking. I really honestly, prior to a few months ago, I was never looking through the whole Washington organizing lens from a defensive perspective, from a perspective of how can we show everyone that we're always fighting on all fronts. Because we organized that the event, and let's shelve the documentary for a minute and talk about the 11 or 12 barnstorms that whole Washington and coalition partners put on across the state in 2019.
Wow.
In solidarity as part of National Nurses United call to action in support of Rep. Jayapal's bill. So this is, and members of whole Washington going out to support the first historic hearings of 1384 and doing lobbying of holdout of representatives out there to try to push them to co-sponsor. So again, like we shouldn't have to provide this list because it's long of all of the things that whole Washington and we coalition partners, Future to Believe in, Red Berets, and all of the other coalition, Washington Green Party, all the people that Rhonda mentioned a few minutes ago that we've been doing since we've been organizing in 2016 and me when I came along in 2017. But because everything started to come at us as recently on the Twitter thing, and it's not just on Twitter. It became, part of the March for Medicare for All coalition started to push back against state level organizing. Some of the coalition was very much for, for example, Sharif Snuggs, who reached out originally to ask for Red Berets and whole Washington's partnership. So it's interesting because the candlelight vigil was really my way of saying, well, Kenny's coming all the way up here, and I would like to have something. It would be great if we were right near Nancy Pelosi, but we're not. So but maybe we can do a candlelight vigil kind of in observance of all of the deaths for profit that happen every single year, and with the call to action or demand of hearings or something like that. And so that was kind of what that was born out of. And so maybe that's not a good reason. Maybe that's not the most, I don't really know what to say, but it's frustrating to me because although now at this point I am I'm always happy to have Scott come out here and join us and have anybody that is national or anybody from across the state. So for example, Georgia Davenport is coming out. She's one of the few people, kind of essential core people of the whole Washington and coalition partners who I would personally deem it essential for Kenny to interview. And he hasn't had that opportunity yet. So she's coming out. We're always happy to get together. This is the thing we loved during I-1600, our first initiative, when there wasn't when there wasn't COVID to worry about. It was such a joyous time. I remember it as being like a frantic, but completely like energizing, and I just felt so connected up to everybody all over the state, and like seeing pictures of people and all their filled up petitions. And I was knitting berets at the same time. Of course, I was very new to activism, so it was all new and very, very joyous and idealistic. And that was all of its time. We know better now. No, I'm just kidding. But but I don't really, I want something to, I want to kind of rectify my own thinking around this candlelight vigil and just really hold how truly thankful that I am for, for people who are here in solidarity, understanding that every candle that we light, every megaphone that we grab, every coalition that we build, every stitch that we knit or crochet, every coalition partner that we bring together, if it's in the community and at the precinct level, if it's at the state level demanding a hearing, if it's at the national level demanding a damn hearing, these things are all in service towards national improved Medicare for all. And, I want to get past this point of kind of, defensiveness, but this has been, months and it's quieted down now. So thank you. But I want to really say that this kind of changed, not for the better, because I was always acting in good faith. For the most part, I can be a grumpy, bossy. Everybody knows what some of my drawbacks are, but for the most part, I want to knit and amplify and lift up everyone who's organizing and bringing these people, everybody that's for healthcare justice together. So I don't really want to think of myself as, ooh, we have to do a candlelight vigil because we need to show that whole Washington's been doing this since the beginning. And so have the Washington Bernie-crats a future to believe in. This is something that the records and the receipts are all there. So it's been really, I have to kind of get it out of my system, and I'm not sure that it is yet. It's to have to come to defend knitting 350 berets and getting together with organizers that are doing the amount of work that these ladies and so many more people have done for this cause over the years has actually made me really angry. And I think I really just need to say that. Like, it's not okay to pour cold water on good organizers, people who have done way the hell more than most of the members of the Progressive Caucus for National Improved Medicare for All. And, I don't know if it's okay to be angry about this, but I never ever thought that I would have to work harder to overcome opposition and people wanting to shut me out of national organizing from allies who are for Medicare for all than from right-wingers. As someone who has a prolific, big presence on Twitter, and I'm not bragging about that, it's a point that I seriously...
It's okay, you can brag about it.
I seriously have never experienced the level of pushback or pouring cold water or otherism towards whole Washington from right-wingers than I have in recent months.
I found a lot of it is just they're not desperate like a lot of us are. They're sitting cushy in their little seats and they don't realize how desperate we are. We need to come at it at every freaking angle or we'll never get anywhere. And this whole business of the state is going to derail the national. No. Sure. I'm sure the state marijuana has really done a damage on our national push, right? Our same-sex marriage state by state that passed really did a number nationally. It didn't happen, did it? No, it's bullshit. And we need to stop and we need to get out of each other's way and by any means possible, period. That's it.
They also have a contradiction in their argument. It's a really big contradiction. Because they're saying that there's a fiscal sustainability problem at the state level that's going to cause the state programs to fail. And they're shouting about that. They're screaming about that. They're providing statistics and various interviews with authority figures who, by the way, are not addressing the subject specifically in terms of the detail. There are a lot of generalities, they're using, to attack this. But while they're doing this, they're also saying if the state programs fail, that's going to damage us, okay, at the national level. Where the contradiction comes in is you're telling everybody that it can't be fiscally sustainable at the state level. So if it turns out it's not fiscally sustainable at the state level, how is that going to hurt the national effort, where you're also claiming that that's going to be fiscally sustainable? In other words, all you have to do is say, hey, we told you so. We knew it was going to fail at the state level. Our theory tells us, it's going to fail at the state level, but the same theory also tells us, it's going to be nationally successful. So it seems to me if we fail at the state level, that kind of proves their point. It doesn't discredit their argument. It's actually completely consistent with their argument. On the other hand, if we don't fail at the state level, then that presents a problem for their argument. And maybe that's why they're so hostile to the state level efforts.
Yeah, that hostility has got to end, though. I mean, it really is damaging to the movement as a whole. And I am just sick and tired of it, honestly.
I think we can get it passed to the state level. As somebody who gathered 2,000 signatures at a farmer's market every weekend, and I just did the Peace and Justice Fair, even though we suspended our campaign, I have 3 sheets of people signing up to either sign the petition or volunteer to get signatures. So the momentum is growing.
I'm sure the momentum is growing, but in looking at the economic arguments from Jerry Friedman, those are very, very impressive. The plan for actually getting revenue to cover this is a very, very strong plan. I think the program is going to prove to be perfectly sustainable. I don't think there's going to be any problem with it.
I agree.
At all.
I agree. He found more money than what was needed. And with his second study, he's saying, well, you know what? It looks like we might not even need this. So, and the money is there. And what Washington did, and they're brilliant at, is we're able to push this without having to get these waivers that everybody's so worried about. You actually just need to apply like any other insurance piece to get onto those things. There's a contract you need to sign. They make it sound like it's a whole lot like sinister and harder to do, or like it's never going to happen. But in essence, it's actually laid out pretty simply, and to get everybody covered here in Washington State, and have, not have to take, as much out as originally that Gerald Friedman came up with. It's gone down. So we can absolutely do it here and be a model on how every other state can also do that, because there's other states that are worried about these waivers, and that's what they're trying to push federally. Well, we need to get these waivers done. Yeah, that would make it easier, but it's not necessary. And so we've got to get that message out too. You don't need to be scared. We have ways through this. We can get everybody covered, and not break the bank on people who are just trying to live their day.
What the Friedman study shows is that if one looks at current projected expenses in Washington for 2022, that's almost $100 billion. I'm talking about, projected expenditures for healthcare, in the whole state. Okay. When you look at his figures, about 31, 32, 33% of that can be saved by single payer. So it brings down the total to 67 million. Out of the 67 million, 47 million would actually be covered by various forms of federal financing. So there's only a gap of 20.5 billion to fill.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the payroll taxes, the 8.5% for the employers and the 2% for workers, that covers 88.1% of the total amount that is supposed to be raised, but that total amount that's supposed to come out of all the taxes they have is 32,700,000,000, okay, and 8 million. So there's a surplus of 12 billion. Okay, that is a surplus over the 20.5 billion, which actually has to be covered. So in other words, I'm going a long way of saying that the 88.1% would itself bring in roughly $29 billion. And that $29 billion is about, involves a surplus, okay, of 8 billion. So you really don't need all the other taxes. All you need is the employer payroll tax and the employee payroll tax.
Exactly.
If you have a surplus, okay, of 8 billion in the first year, then something pretty terrible has to happen to the economy in the second year for you to eat up that surplus. In other words, that surplus pretty much ensures that you'll be solid for the second year, even if there's a total tragedy.
Yeah, to us it's a no-brainer, and we're just banging our heads against the wall because we see it. It can work. And we can get our public healthy and not have to lose their homes and their whole livelihoods if something happens. And again, it's a pandemic. I mean, come on now. What other time in history is it more prevalent to keep your populace safe and healthy than now? And they have no desire to do that, and they're talking about piecemealing shit in again here and there. It's ridiculous. There's just no need for anybody to fall through this crack, period. No need.
It's not only ridiculous, it is morally corrupt.
Yeah.
Right.
It is simply corrupt. Our national politicians, except for a few of them, are morally corrupt people. They're just looking the other way when they could easily do something about something. And at the federal level, if you had the Medicare for All program, if you had HR 1976, it would result in far less healthcare spending than we have now.
We save money. It saves money, period. And everybody gets care. I mean, come on. Yeah. So look at those donations. Who's getting what? Look at who's getting the insurance company and who's getting the pharmaceutical company money and who's getting this long-term care money, because that's another thing. It's healthcare money. It's all about profits in their own pocket, and our legislatures are. Yeah,
and it's all about the healthcare providers and the insurance companies and the pharmaceuticals having control over the major committees in Congress. If we could wave, a magic wand, and we could destroy the committee system overnight, things would immediately change then, because their base of power, is in the committees.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that most of the committee chairs are bought off by the donors.
Yeah.
Well, the ones who get the chairs are the ones who bring in the most donations, and
exactly that's the most problem.
Donations are these corrupt entities, and so it's working perfectly by design.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I return for a moment, just to loop back to the candlelight vigil, because I do feel.
Let us loop.
Let's loop. Some of the goodness that was originally in that intention was including Anna DeNoyer and Emma, is like this
family.
We have to include them as a family, because it's asking a lot to ask the most dedicated activists and people who have lost someone dear to them and who are working on. I mean, look, Scott's raising money right now for Suicide Prevention Month. He's doing a big event tomorrow that everyone will hopefully go out and help amplify on social media. And he's been creating special lockets for that. Like, everybody's out of pocket who does creative things for this, for their materials and then art. So I guess that was part of the goodness of it is, Kenny was loving to see some of the people who he has interviewed to kind of bring them in a few times, bring all of us in a few times doing these actions. And so the opportunity to bring Scott and his family out, for them to kind of hold that space together and kind of lead us in that. And also too, I guess, I believe this kind of came into our strategy panel just a little bit, is, and I fully agree, we need escalation. So while I'm really excited to do this action, where we're actually like going to Pelosi's house and protesting and doing this, like the energy of the Tacoma action was very much like this. The energy for going to protest Senator Cleveland is going to be like this. It's going to be, we're going to have some angry activists, and we're going to have some polite activists, but we're going to definitely get our message out there very, very strongly. And so what came into the strategy panel a little bit was that we actually need escalation. This was, Courtney Love's point. I want to see some escalation, and Sharif Snuggs came in and expounded upon that further. Both of them, who hasn't seen that panel that's on Red Beret's YouTube channel, go check it out, because they both made a very good point about some people needing to step forward who are willing to get arrested, who are willing to do arrestable actions. Now, not saying anybody that's going to Pelosi's is for sure going to be, there's hopefully going to be a lot of us, but people need to be aware as we do these. That is, that's what we can't get any media attention. What is it that we need to do in order to actually that's what the whole point of Force the Vote was. Well, it was to get hearings, but one of the things was we knew what we needed to force it into the national conversation. We needed to force it into the national conversation, because it ain't on the Democrats' platform, and it ain't on there because that's not on there on purpose. So while I completely and absolutely agree that we need these actions that are loud and proud and edgy and angry and, peaceful but arrestable, I also think there also needs to be the demonstration of joy and warmth in activism. So candlelight is light and warmth in the darkness. And we are in the darkness right now. We are in the darkness. We are each other's light. And so, while a candlelight vigil is not, it's a different sort of a protest and a different sort of holding space.
It's a different sort of protest. It has a sacredness about it.
It has a sacredness about it. And the same thing to kind of move to not even just the fiber arts or crafting, but creating the lockets, creating jewelry, creating artwork,
music.
We
have some beautiful music out there.
All kinds of artwork. Mm-hmm. These are the things that, we want to be seen out in public spaces sharing and doing. And Leah's they're going to be inviting a musician to help lead us in some song, because I think, and this was kind of the point of the Red Berets, is there's really a lot of people who, while some of the people that were knitting for the Pussy Hat movement are going to be fixed in that centrist policy, and I'm not trying to move all those people. I am here to say I think there's probably a fair many of them, and we don't have some big gigantic email list that the Democratic establishment is helping with. But if we could, the whole point was always, maybe if we could get this word out. Crafters want to knit for a good cause. Guess what? A lot of crafters are otherly abled or homebound, or they're aged, and some, not all crafters are old. I don't want to make any stereotypes about it, but the point is, not everyone can be in the trenches. Not everyone feels safe, but they want to contribute. So the whole idea is we want to be out, not only in terms of the documentary, but this is the lens with which we are doing these actions through right now. But just outside of that, we want to show people a huge range of possibilities of here's how you can be involved. You don't have to be the person yelling through the megaphone outside of Pelosi, but we need you. We need those people. But you can be this person that is knitting for whole Washington, or knitting for national Medicare for all, so I wanted to revisit that on the candlelight vigil, because I tend sometimes to pin it on myself that I'm only going about things to appease or to kind of do this. And that's just not so. Ultimately, at the bottom, what did this idea sort of come about? It came about because of the goodness of wanting to provide something else for this. And it's perfect to bring the Denoyers out here, because they've come out once before and they're huge supporters of whole Washington, and they help us bridge that link across from one coast to the other to New York Health Act. We're this strand of solidarity, and Scott
solidarity from one coast to the other.
Absolutely.
And also the national movement, and the state level movements, because Scott, and his family are also for both.
Yes.
The fighting, on all fronts. There are two questions.
And Sharif came out and participated and helped us on the last time. So I want to give that big shout out to Sharif as well. There's lots of us.
Right.
But I just thank you for letting me kind of revisit that for a minute, because that was important.
Okay, so two questions, I wanted to ask. First one is about the music. What kind of music, you're planning for the vigil?
Folk music. I have a friend who's a folk artist, so I'm going to be meeting with her to ask her to sing and possibly write some songs for the event. And she's a huge supporter of universal health care.
What are some of the folk songs that she's likely to sing?
I don't know yet, so I'll have to get with her and see what she comes up with. She's very creative. Her dad was a folk singer. What's her dad's name, Steve?
Bob Gibson.
Her dad was Bob Gibson, who was a well-known folk singer. So, and she has an amazing voice, and so I'm hoping to have her at our event.
I want to poke in here about music, because that's something that from the Tacoma event years ago, Laura, when we all came together, we have reached out to many different types of artists, and we've had just amazing success bringing in, some rappers and things like that. We have Seven DePantha and Real Life who showed up. And Seven DePantha is now leading the Black Panther Party of Washington State. It's these relationships we built years ago that now we all trust in each other and are ready to work hard to get these things pushed through. Bob Wickline, he's done amazing music with Medicare for All. He's got a great Medicare for All song that we were singing on our march in Seattle. So it's about bridging and trying to bring in all facets of music. Music is the one thing that touches everybody's soul, and you find that right tone, that right beat, that right feeling. It's hard to resist. So
yes, I think the power of music in the context of a vigil is very, very important. It can really multiply the power of the vigil. So I wanted to ask about that. And then the other thing that I think of, is very, very important, is when you do a protest in front of somebody's house, or you do a protest that, is targeted at them, and especially in this particular context, where we're talking about their opposition to a Medicare for All program, is it possible to convey to them, can we have any success in conveying to them their opposition and their actions are costing people their lives, that at some level they are supporting murder. I know people don't like to hear that, but I feel that in some way, in some gentle way perhaps, they have to be confronted with the truth of that. Then they have to square that with their private lives and with their going to church on Sunday, with their core beliefs, which all of them have, some sense, or other. I think that people in Congress tend to lose sight of those aspects, and it's hard to get through to them. It's hard to ask them, communicate with them at the level of saying, what the hell are you doing? What is it you think you're doing? 68,000 people a year, are dying because of lack of insurance. Hundreds of thousands are dying because of inadequate insurance. What is it you people are doing? I don't know how they can keep on pushing that truth away from them. I'd like to know what their mental processes are.
I'd like to know why these progressives that people put all their energy in and got them elected, why they aren't fighting for what they promised.
I want to know that
too.
too.
We're not fighting for it.
I want to know that too.
Yeah.
I want to know how AOC can justify her actions since she's come into Congress.
Yeah.
I'm sure it has to do with her perception of Nancy Pelosi's power. But right at the start of this year, on January 3rd, the progressives, specifically the squad, just the six people who confessed to being members of the squad, and also Newman, and Mondaire Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Those 8 people had enough votes that they could have ensured that Nancy Pelosi would no longer be the Speaker of the House if they had come together and they had decided to do that. They didn't even have to be joined by Jayapal, or by
Ro-Khanna.
Yeah, I don't understand them either, but they didn't even have to be joined by them. They had a sufficient number of votes. I did the math. It wasn't really math, it was just arithmetic. And I did the scenarios. And it was literally impossible for Nancy Pelosi to win if even 6 of them had decided to stand against her by voting for some third party. It wasn't a question of voting for Kevin McCarthy. They didn't have to vote for Kevin McCarthy. They could have voted for somebody outside of the House to be Speaker of the House. That's perfectly legal in that sort of vote. Just to hold that place so she couldn't get a majority of the votes. It's the majority of the votes cast that makes one a speaker. It's not the plurality. It's the majority. So it all depends. If you have 430 votes cast, so then you need a majority of the 430 votes. You need 216 votes. They could have seen to it, that Nancy Pelosi was frozen at 214 votes. And she could never have become the Speaker then. And after about 6 rounds of trying, she would have had to step away. And then some other people would have emerged and contended for the speakership. Then at that point, what you do is you negotiate with these multiple candidates who would have stepped forward by then. And you could make a much, much better deal than you can make prior to the vote with Nancy Pelosi. I'll never know why they didn't do that. It's like they can't count.
Can I just make a request?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to request that before we get too far into that we make sure that our coalitions led by, I think you have really amazing calculations. And is it Debbie Dingle? Is it Representative Dingle, Joe, that I guess I'm saying before, when we go into this
right.
November and December, we need to make sure that we have March for Medicare for all. Whole Washington doesn't necessarily put out, but volunteers of whole Washington and
right. Okay, there are a number of people who would have been to the left of Nancy Pelosi, who would have been able to take over, and yet centrist enough in terms of the caucus itself that they wouldn't have been, completely unacceptable to the right. Now, Debbie Dingle is an interesting case because she is at once a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, and she's also a member of the Congressional Progressives Caucus. How she did that, I don't know, but she obviously has contacts with the rightist people inside of the party. And also, she's in very good standing, with all the leftist people. Now, probably Barbara Lee would be considered to be too far left, and would not be, a real candidate. But if you look at people like by Rosa DeLauro, Debbie Dingle, by Jan Schakowsky, perhaps even Catherine Clark, who right now is Nancy Pelosi's assistant speaker, but who has a voting record which is fairly progressive since she came into Congress. And I don't think she is yet bought, by the big donors. So she might have been someone, who would have emerged. Karen Bass is someone not perceived as far to the left, as say a Barbara Lee. So she was another possibility. So there were maybe 6 possibilities of people that the squad and the CPC could have gotten a better deal from. So what kind of deal, is a better deal? Well, committee assignments, first of all, very, very important. There are rules changes. Getting rid of the pay-go rule completely, entirely, that's a very, very important rules change. And another rules change that nobody talks about. How about having a rule that if you get 20 co-sponsors for a bill, you automatically get a floor vote, in a certain number of days. That would really dilute the power of the committees to bottle up certain pieces of, legislation. It's a simple thing, but it could really change the power structure in Congress. And then, of course, they could have also negotiated for specific floor votes for H.R. 1976, but for the Green New Deal, by student debt elimination, 4 or 5 specific, very specific kinds of floor votes. They could have demanded in that kind of context. And the person who was ready to take over, of the ones that I talked about, would not be approaching the negotiations with them in the kind of arrogant way that Nancy Pelosi does. In other words, by now, Nancy Pelosi is entitled. She feels entitled inside herself. I mean, you can see it.
Yeah.
Some of these others would not feel that same way. And so they would approach a negotiation with, I'm making a deal with these people, and I'm the kind of person who keeps to my deals. And you could probably trust most of the people that I named to keep to their deals. And that's very important, because even if you make a deal with Nancy Pelosi, she's going to find a way to go back on that deal. She might fulfill the letter of the deal, but she'll find a way to turn it upside down. But I don't think some of these other people would have been like that.
Mhm.
And you can tell from their careers in Congress that they're not like that. I'm not saying they're angels, but I'm saying you can trust them to do certain things and to care about certain things. But someone like a Rosa DeLauro is very passionate about her beliefs. Okay, and she's married to Stan Greenberg, who has been a Democratic pollster on the left, though, for many, many, many years. So you can almost envision what goes on inside of that family in terms of what they talk about. You know, you have to consider things like this as well. Some of the more subtle things about who the person is, you know, who is in Congress. In Debbie Dingle's case, she was the wife of John Dingle from 1980 until he died in 2000, okay, in 16. He was much older than she. But he was one of the longest serving, okay, of Congress people. He came in about, I think it was 1956 or something like that. And he retired, you know, in 2016. He was always for Medicare for all. He was for something like a national health service. For his whole life, he favored these particular things. And she was with him on campaigns, completely consumed by politics all those years. John Dingle's seat was held by John Dingle's father. And John Dingle's father was for a national health service before John Dingle took that seat. I mean, that seat is a family business. It's a dynasty, and it has been for all this time. What's the leading characteristic of that particular dynasty? It is being favorable to universal health care and Medicare for all for a hugely long time. Okay, and Debbie Dingle is passionate about Medicare for all right now.
I just wonder what we can do to. I mean, I know I mentioned I should try to mail her a red beret, but I keep forgetting. Like, I would at least like to make a thread or maybe since you have all that, but I'm not giving you an assignment, Joe. But it just seems like, why don't we amplify this person and tell people that history? Because it sounds like we have a real, and again, not to. Why am I trying to walk this careful line? All of us in Washington State are really. I'll speak for myself. I'm so disgusted and irritated that chair of the Progressive Caucus, and AOC takes up. Everyone should take whatever heat. Pelosi, everyone should take whatever heat that people want to put on them. They represent us. That's the bottom line, and I don't care if they're beloved progressives or if they're right-wing corporatists or whatever. Everybody has a right to demand stuff of these people. We're paying handsomely their salary, and they have the best health care that our money can buy. So I don't care who they are. Their job is to move legislation and to at least consider legislation and to give it a public hearing. So I guess my point is why she flies under the radar so much irritates me. And she's recently met with a couple of representatives of whole Washington and given yet another reason, same reason as last time, as to why she won't endorse whole Washington. And it's not a good enough reason. I don't know. What do you think, Rhonda? I don't know if I want to air it all out right here. I don't. Maybe you want to speak to that. But I guess my point is that Jayapal is always being hailed as like this progressive champion for Medicare for all. And it's like, to me, I'd like to amplify someone who's, if we all want to get rid of these dynasties and we want to have term limits and all that stuff. But in terms of having like a seat that has been held and people that have remained favorable to single payer, even a national system, that to me deserves to be amplified in a story that, really should be told, and many more people should know who this representative is, And if we're going to put somebody up on a pedestal for, at least this person is an actual proponent, and I don't mean to say Jayapal isn't, but here in Washington State, it wouldn't be difficult for her to let everybody know. She doesn't even need to get involved. She can just make an announcement that, the next time we're running an initiative, by the way, I'm going to keep pressing forward with my purview, which is federal legislation. But just so everyone knows, there is an initiative here in Washington State, and as a resident of Washington State, I will be signing this petition because, that is not difficult. And
It's
we all
Laura, let's not forget how she got elected. She got
Right.
elected because Bernie endorsed her.
right.
I remember watching the night when he was there endorsing her, and he came here to Washington. And then she promised to support universal health care. And we can't, it's like she's lost her way. I don't know why she's.
Well, she is a
not
fierce
supporting
advocate for the federal push, and she was more hesitant about a state one, but she has been opening up throughout the last year or two.
Not enough.
Well, with Our Revolution, we've done a few different shows with her on it, and we would have her and Whole Washington like back to back. So she had to hear about it, and she started commenting more and more about it. And we've even met with her staff member who focuses on the state, more of the Medicare for all state by state plan. So there is some opening there. I think some more working around. I don't think it's totally shut off, honestly. But I think just the more people we can get, to really show up and start pushing, and even, directly, after, once we're ready again, really going after her to endorse it, and having more meetings with her staff person who is ahead of it. I do think that there's still, there's some light there. So I don't want to, shut it all down.
No, I don't want to shut it down either. And she did send out the, to her credit, she sent out the solidarity message to the March for Medicare for All Seattle,
Right.
And as a whole to March for Medicare for All. So, and that is wonderful. That is a start.
I think we need to try to get her face to face with it more and more. Like I said, I think it was really helpful having her on, our statewide, and national kind of platform through Our Revolution when we were Our Revolution Washington. And we had her on a few different times. We set it up to where Whole Washington was right there and speaking while she was there. And so she, was in her face a bit more. So I think we need to look at trying to keep doing that more and more. Because sometimes that's the only time we really get their attention is when we have them in our,
So
It's
I've actually been in a room with Jayapal because she came down a couple years ago to Oregon to support Medicare for all. Her staff protects her very well.
Oh yes,
yes, they do.
Could not even approach her to ask a question.
And the same thing happened in Seattle with the press conference in 2018 for Initiative 1600 when we were all there. And I'm going to say that about 30%, and that's a conservative number, of the 100-ish, whatever it was that showed up there just near Pike Place Market. Yeah, we showed up with our petition boards and our Whole Washington Red t-shirts and our berets. And boy, I saw the footage later on. Many of us probably did. I find it really fascinating how there was a lot of red there. The fact that they managed to get all the camera angles to exclude all of that, that was by design. And it was also like we were right there in this little intimate alley, and we still didn't get a signature or get an opportunity to talk to her. And again, that's not by accident. So
true.
No, it's really there was one other thing I wanted to say. Yeah, I mean, here you go. oh my goodness, I just don't know how much that we amplified this, this action in Tacoma that was pretty much completely, no, not even pretty much, that was completely this is for Rep. Kilmer, you need to co-sponsor Rep. Jayapal's bill.
Yes.
Pure and simple, organized by Whole Washington and coalition partners. To me, I like that's the kind of thing to pull it away from Jayapal just a bit, but to kind of say when there, when people push back and say, why are you being this hard on the people that are potentially like your strongest allies? Because when we have stuff like that, where the grassroots are very, very strongly supporting, like doing a lot for your own legislation, it's just simply not okay to ignore us. Not in the state of oligarchy. The solidarity can't continue to run one direction. Here, we'll come out and support your legislation and arguably fight for it and push for it harder than you're pushing for it right now. And not even so much as a tweet or an acknowledgement. Not okay with me. I don't speak for everyone in whole Washington. I sure don't speak for everyone in March for Medicare for All. But me, Laura Fielding, not okay with me. I do want the door to remain open.
Yes.
And I also am always willing and happy to turn around on a dime and say, oh, I spoke too soon. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Like, I don't have any pride when it comes to that. That's not what this is about. This is like, right? But, oh my gosh, I've tweeted at her like a gazillion billion times, And I know
reciprocity is all we need. Just a little bit of reciprocity.
Just a little bit. Just a little. Or a lot, at this point, because we're in an oligarchy. So we actually, at the very least, I think, help us. We're getting a media shutout. Come on now. Same thing with Bernie. We can turn it away from Jayapal for a minute. And this is, and they are watching. And that's why, Dr. Jane Sanders came along recently. And we all she liked, the whatever. We're going to continue to fight at the state level. I don't remember what the tweet was, but we all amplified it. And Andre Stackhouse circled the liked by Jane Sanders. They are watching. They know. And I would just like to push on that a little bit more. Say thank you. And one tweet or one email, and please consider, all of you, how much that we have collectively donated monetarily and time and text banking and door knocking for campaigns, for Bernie's campaign, for all these progressive campaigns. We're asking for a little bit of solidarity back. And I go through this on different interviews, and I think it's important to kind of keep saying, this is not attacking them. This is asking for some reciprocity, and it's not too much to ask. So that's all.
So my view of that is, to the extent that they try to insulate themselves from us, and to the extent they try not to communicate with us, to avoid communicating with us, to that extent, we have lost our democracy.
Yes.
If we really lived in a democracy, they would be anxious. They would be anxious to hold those town halls, to hear what we had to say, and to answer us in an honest way. Because we know, and they should know, that is the essence of a democracy. And if you can't do that for your constituents, for me, that is reason enough to vote against them and to get them out of there.
Yeah.
So I don't want to speak a little bit about Senator Cleveland. So Senator Cleveland and our state representatives, they have what they call town halls. They're not really town halls. People have to put their questions on a card. They don't want any confrontation. They don't want any back and forth of people asking questions. So they keep it to, here's a card where they can actually pick and choose which questions they ask.
I know, they've been doing that for a long time.
Town hall.
That is definitely not a town hall. Definitely not a town hall. Now, town halls, sometimes can get out of control and explosive, certainly, because feelings can run high in town halls. But that's what democracy is about. And when you don't have that, you risk getting much more serious explosions. So you've got to have that. Well, going back to Bernie, one thing I do not understand in the 2020 campaign, he mobilized us by talking about not me, us, emphasizing that very strongly, pointing up that he had a bottom-up movement and that it wasn't really about him. But when it came time for him to make a decision about dropping out, he never asked us.
No.
He never consulted us. He had the means, he had the money to do polling and to find out whether we wanted him to drop out or not. So suddenly, at that point, okay, it was about him. And since that time, in terms of his relations with the grassroots, it's also top down. He's still doing top down.
He's also picking and choosing which progressives he endorses.
Yes.
Which is very sad.
Yes.
I mean, we could have had a progressive senator in Kentucky, and he did not step up and endorse Charles Booker.
Charlie Booker, yeah, I know.
They let Amy McGrath take that spot, and he didn't say one thing. He was completely silent.
I know, he was completely silent. And Amy McGrath wasted, what was it, $88 million?
Yes, she was Chuck Schumer's candidate.
Yes, I know. Chuck Schumer interfered in state affairs.
Yep.
To get
he got a lot of money from New York, from my understanding.
Yes. That was terrible. And Jamie Harrison in South Carolina, was it?
Yep.
I think. Another one. $110 million wasted on that race. Jamie Harrison was incompetent.
He was horrible.
He was horrible. He was just.
So what we need now is for everybody to rally around whole Washington, a national rallying around so we can get this passed here, put the funds here, travel out here like we have people traveling for campaigns like Nina's campaign and Bernie's, knocking on doors. We need that to come here. We get this, passed here, it'll be a domino effect. But we need to look at it in those realms. Like we're going to have to come together as a nation to try to push even one state through.
And we have representatives here that support it. I mean, Marco Leas went and picked up petitions to go out and get signatures. And he's one of our state senators, who completely supports it. We really need to be building coalitions with those representatives that do support it.
Right. And you need to support them very, very strongly.
Exactly.
In return for their support of it.
Exactly. Which I supported
Marco
Leas when he ran for
Hasagawa's name again, just because he's always been a champion for us. So Bob Hasagawa.
Exactly.
Yeah. Always been a huge champion. He's the one that introduced the bill in our Senate, but he is a Bernie-crat through and through. He is behind all of the initiatives and bills for the people. That's really where his heart is.
He was actually the lead champion. He was a Bernie delegate in 2020, and he championed and he stood strong and got all of us to stand behind him. And he did not vote on the what is it called? Movie. I can't think of the name of it. I'll think of it. But he did not support he did not support or vote for the platform, because they pulled universal health care out of it. He stood strong here, and he was one of the loud voices for the state of Washington to say, no, we're not voting for this platform, because Biden's team pulled it out of it.
Yes, so they did. Mm-hmm. Speaking of standing strong, one of the things Jayapal did actually last fall is that she took over the CPC. and she reorganized its internal structure so that people like Katie Porter have really good positions. Ilhan Omar has a really good position. She did this supposedly to tighten up the discipline inside of the caucus and make the caucus a more effective weapon. She specifically indicated she did not mind if the caucus got smaller, and she looked towards its actually paring away quite a few members of the caucus. Now, it's still 90 people strong. It's probably still too large because there are a lot of people in it who are, not really progressive. Hakeem Jeffries, of course, is one. But the point is she's been working with this new model then for very close to a year now. So my question is, has she forged a weapon? Has she created sufficient discipline in the caucus? She's been saying on television over the last week or two that she's got more than half of the votes of the caucus to enforce the supposed deal that was made, that the infrastructure bill does not pass, unless the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill passes along with it. So the question is, as you know her, since you know her from Washington and how she's acted over a period of years, far better than other people in the country, when she says she has the votes of more than half of the caucus to enforce the idea that the two pieces, of legislation are going to pass, at once, or they won't pass at all. Is she telling the truth? Does she have roughly 50 votes we're talking about here?
I trust in what she says. If she thinks she has about 50%, over 50%, I do lean to believe her first off, then rather than to disbelieve her. But proof is in the pudding, I guess. I want to see some actionable items happening with that. Show us those numbers. But yeah, I do tend to lean to believe her when she says things than disbelieve her.
She probably doesn't need the 50 votes. You can probably get away with it if she has only 30 votes.
I think if she says she has the votes, she has the votes. And I second what Rhonda is saying about the proof being in the pudding. I desperately want to believe that they're going to hold the line on that. They absolutely need to. It's difficult to imagine a more that we can be devastated even more by the failures of standing up. This would be a new low if they don't hold that line.
It would be a new low. It would definitely be a new low. But on the other hand, on the other side, if they hold the line on this and they get the 3.5T bill, they will then have proved something that no previous progressives, at least in the last 40, 50 years, have really proved, that they could say no and that they could exert a veto power in the Congress. And that's the key, really, to getting things for us. If they have a veto power, then they can always horse trade. If they don't have a veto power, they cannot even do that.
Right. And that's why we've been working on trying to get as many progressives in to have that power. But, if the number's there, they got to exert that power now. They have to show that that's what it is. They've got to, and that's what we're waiting on, is for that muscle to be,
They do. And it gets it with every single disappointment. You still have some of us that understand. What am I trying to say? Like, I really, really want people like Rebecca Parson and Jason Call
Me
to
too.
be, as much as I am so done with the Democratic Party, but we just can't be completely done until but I'm all for building, a coalition government and trying to get some people in where it's possible. But the thing about it is even the best of the best, even the people that we hold up to be the gold standard, and how do I personally, and I think we're probably all in agreement here, what's the gold standard for a candidate that is running as a Democrat? Unfortunately, that's the path that they have, in order to be in a winnable race in a lot of these districts, is like, I wouldn't even touch a Democrat contributing or otherwise. If it's just someone, I might say, yay, hit a like or a retweet on social media, although maybe that's even questionable now. If they were just saying Medicare for all, like, I now require that you're a serious activist like me. That's like my litmus test. If you don't have a record of activism, because now we have the level of disappointments and failures to really stand up and fight from within
Yes.
Progressive Caucus, that now our standard keeps going. As their standard goes down and down and down, the standard for what we're expecting people, in order for them to get any kind of campaign support and contributions, is going up and up and up.
Yes.
So as much as I want to support and amplify and retweet, and I want to see Jason Call and Rebecca head to Congress, because I agree, like, we need I do think the more people, and then, we asked Jason the other night, it really made me happy to hear him say that, he would endorse some candidates outside the Democratic Party. We need some bold moves like that. We need some things like that. But, with every single, not failure, but failure to force the vote, failure to stand publicly with March for Medicare for All, failure to all these different disappointments where they're proving over and over again they don't give a rat's rear end about the grassroots. They think we're dispensable and we're only there when they need us, which is horseshit. It makes it tougher and tougher for us to support the people that we want to send to Congress. It's rough out there on Twitter. These are the awake activists, and when we go retweeting, even the best of the best, who are decades-long activists, anti-war activists, and Medicare for All activists, and on the board of Whole Washington, sorry, they're running as a Democrat. Well, we can explain till the cows come home that, hey, we are the sliver. These people on Twitter, this is not the real deal out in the constituency. Is people are still locked into the two-party system. You want to change that? Go out and canvass. Go out and start telling people, because that's what you got to do. Right now, these are the choices. If you want to change that, go out and build a third party. Okay? But I'm just saying, they make it damn hard for us to even get some support.
Yes.
And that's not my fault. And that's not Jason Call's fault. And that's not Rebecca Parsons' fault. They can't keep failing on this shit because they're making it absolutely impossible for us to add to their numbers.
It's true. That's one thing that we were very proud of with the Washington Bernie-Crats coalition. And, we've endorsed across party lines, and we encourage third parties. And we have always been not beholden to the Democratic Party. And it's about true policy. And that's where we need to really focus, is that policy piece. If the policies are with us, with the people, I don't care what's behind their name. I'm really not. But we've always asked our candidates, too, if we endorse them, to go do the work. So if they didn't know much about Whole Washington, what was going on, they got educated and they got the information they needed to be able to go out there and either gather signatures or get that information out there. And not just for Whole Washington, but for our environmental pieces, for all the issues that we're about. So, if they're, a lot of, at first in 2016 and stuff, a lot of people stepped up, but didn't understand all the different policies we're out there fighting for. So we spent a lot of time just educating those that are going to be out there on their pulpit. So I think the more and more we do that, the more, we're going to grow. And in Washington, we're just fortunate that we can have third parties quite easily because we do not register for parties here. And anybody can sign up any kind of party they want to run under. There's no hoops to jump through. So just about really, getting our boots on the ground people together and having them realize that you can. And especially with local positions, it's much easier to run as a third party than it is for a federal position. But it can be done. We just got to get our movement together.
But they're not winning, Rhonda. I mean,
Well,
when you go to the doors and you talk to people, they'll flat out ask you, is your candidate a Democrat or Republican? And I'm running into that working on a city council seat which is nonpartisan.
Right. It's nonpartisan. I want everything to be nonpartisan, honestly.
Well, so does our candidate that we're supporting down here. So
right. But the more we talk about and educate and get people to do that and run, like, you guys are building up an amazing, momentum, a movement in Vancouver, right? So as you're talking to people, and saying, well, the Democrats and Republicans aren't doing much for you, independent is the biggest swath of people. They want something different. And I think the more and more desperate we all become, the more open they're going to be. Yeah. So we just got to keep pushing that and embracing those who are coming out as a third party.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've brought 3 LDs together down here, and the majority is we would like to see a third party.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm saying
we're done with using the vote builder and giving the Democratic Party our information.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've got the tools now, and it's we're coming together, and I think we're gonna really be, a state that we can show how people can be replicated from state to state, getting our own data, really working together. And becoming that third party, no matter what it's called. And that's really what it always comes down to is people's pride. What is it going to be called? I say, screw it. We don't need a name right now. We just need to build together. And I think it will come together. I think the Rainbow Coalition is coming back. I think, more and more people are getting back into electoral politics. That we're done with it a long time ago. So I see our Black and Brown communities rising up and coming together. I see our disabled communities rising up and saying this is enough. And like I said, there's tons of different party names out there, but we all are coming together as one because the policies are consistent throughout these. And really get rid of that egotism, of what's really pulling us apart. And embrace all of these different names. I think it only shows that we're stronger if we really work together than trying to conform everybody into one, silo. So it's happening. And I think with the tools, we've got some great people here in Washington State that know tech. Who knew? There's amazing things that are really going to be happening.
Well, my team today made a decision to pull our information, our communication off of Facebook and onto a different format where they can't be shutting us down.
Exactly.
Because we actually had somebody down here, one of our own, who was basically his Facebook was hacked and they removed his account.
Right. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what's the alternative platform that you're going to?
We moved to Signal. It's not beholden to the owners of Facebook.
Oh, just for communication things.
For communication. We're broadening that, though, by bringing more people into our group of organizers from red areas and blue areas.
How is your technical capability in your organization?
We have some really good technical people. Because we have Sharon, who's joining forces with our friend John Culver, who was a big Bernie supporter, both 2016 and 2020. Actually, John Culver was behind the Bernie app.
Yeah, so we're expanding that. So using and expanding and really trying to bring it all into one. He's the guy that builds the digital tools, and Sharon's going to be helpful in really making it pop and keeping things updated. And things like that. We'll phone banking through that, text banking, doing deep canvassing and really, really gathering the data points that is really going to start turning.
Which we'll get to keep ourselves and not hand over to the Democratic Party.
Oh yeah, this is all going to be all.
Yeah, that will be wonderful. The fact that you'll have your own database.
That's our goal, because they're misusing the information they have. I mean.
Yeah, they're misusing it, and they're not making it available to certain candidates.
They don't.
Freeze out certain candidates.
And
Yeah,
and
'cause-
all the data is not that great either. I mean, it's all right, but it's
So
Yeah.
for example, let's go back to Rebecca Parsons, who made it through the primary against another Democrat. They refused to give her vote builder. Let's go back to Sarah Smith running against Adam Smith. When
Yes.
she made it through the primary, they would not allow her to purchase vote builder. That should not ever happen. You shouldn't be able to take it away. Both Democrats who made it through the primary should have
Should
been
have
able
access to
purchase that.
vote builder.
Yes.
Absolutely.
If they're running as Democrats, they should be able to use that information.
Yes.
Yeah.
I entirely agree. Okay, so it's been getting a little late here. We're around 10:46 now. I always turn to comments, okay, at this point. And I go through at least a lot of the comments. Sometimes I go through every comment. Okay, so essentially what I'd like to know is, would you like to stay for the comments, okay, and questions?
I would.
Okay, and Rhonda is in too. How about you, Laura? Are you in?
Yes, I'll stay for, I think I can stay for quite a few of them. I may have to get off in, 30 or 45 minutes, but hopefully I can cut in if I have to and excuse myself, but I'll try to stay as long as I can.
Okay, so I will try to keep to only the most important and detailed comments. Okay. I think I'll skip some of the kidding. Okay, Lisa is here or was here. Georgia Davenport was here or is still here. And Jeffrey Denton, of course. And Atlanta Dell also. KRTD Media, Shane Coughlin is a supporter, okay, of the Red Berets in whole Washington, okay, as well. Okay, and he has a media company, and I suspect that his company would be very friendly to whole Washington, okay, and Red Berets people who want to come on it. Okay, Lisa Theobald says, so much money poured into WA over the last 30 years. It's changed the economic disparity gap in the political landscape as a result. The state ended its primary caucuses. Yes, I noticed that the caucuses were ended because Bernie did too well in the caucuses.
Mm-hmm.
That was exactly what happened, wasn't it?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. They did everything they could to they took that away as quick as they could, man. And we tried to fight it, but it was just, too much.
They organized better than we did, unfortunately.
And Georgia Davenport says, I resigned from the Washington State WS DCC today because our state party is led by people who refuse to take action for a single payer.
Leah and I are both state committee members.
Yeah, I witnessed
We're
that
in the
today.
meeting.
I missed that.
We're in, well, it's
That's
it's the Washington State, state committee meeting. And
That's a big one. All right, I'll make my way on over and
But what was interesting is there was a lot of support from the state committee people talking about supporting universal health care. And so.
Okay, so you think they were talking, but they weren't really serious.
The state committee members really liked the idea, but the top state party chairs don't want to do anything about it. They're
for Georgia to actually resign,
yeah, that's a big deal.
People really need to realize how big of a deal that is.
Deal.
She's been, we've all been in there fighting since 2016 and really working to change the party. And we've gotten up to positions of being on, the local, chairs and boards of the local parties, but also as state committee members, where a lot of the power is on voting on our platforms and on our rules and stuff. And they didn't even come into our resolution piece today to even vote on. And the majority of the state committee members are very much, Medicare for all. I mean, that's, it's a popular thing within the people.
But it's going to be difficult to wipe the smile off my face for the rest of the program. This is permagrit. Now that I know George.
As long as Tina stays in power, she will never force the state Senate and representatives to run on single payer.
Right. Or anybody that she recommends after won't either. Yeah. I mean, we did try we got behind and really tried to get Leonida Hosa in for a state party chair this last go around, and talk about the nastiness behind the scenes that happens.
That's awful, right?
She was so the state chair was actually calling state committee members and lying about her opponent.
Oh, and also degrading her because she is a single mother, but then comes out and later on after she's elected on how important single mothers are and how, they can do. It's disgusting. It's just disgusting. The stranglehold that they have. And
as state committee members who challenged her and voted for her opponent, we didn't get any seats. We didn't get the committees that we wanted.
Of course, that's what they do.
We basically got shut out.
Well, anyway, well done, Georgia.
So Georgia says, "I hope you run against her, Leah."
That's what we're hoping for. Leah would be an amazing opponent against Annette Cleveland.
Yeah, I suspect she would be.
Mm-hmm. And so we're all here waiting for her to be prepared or to announce. I don't think we're going to let her get away with not running. Honestly.
Well, my goal right now is to try to get us moving forward on universal health care in our state, and keeping pressure on.
And getting her out will help. So yes, Leah for LD 49.
Well, unfortunately, she has 4 more years of her term because she's just newly elected. So I'm hoping to see this pass before she was unseated. I mean, I would definitely want to move forward and unseat her because it's not just universal health care that she's voting against. She's voting against her own community. So,
question: can you recall her in Washington?
No.
Well, there is a recall route, but it's a really extremely hard to do, and for her it'd be almost impossible, unfortunately, unless we can come up with something really detrimental. But we're keeping an eye out just in case something pops up that we can.
She's very careful of walking that fine line.
Yeah, it'll be a very difficult thing to happen.
And so she's smart, huh?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, anyway, she's going to be in a documentary as opposing healthcare justice, and we're going to make sure and get as many of these coalition signs, People's Party, Green Party, Progressive Party, Black Panthers, White Panthers, all of these coalition partners signs, in addition to whole Washington, out. So if she wants to be memorialized in the documentary going out nationwide as the senator that's blocking healthcare justice in Washington state, she can be that senator, and she will be that senator. So
Laura, Susan Hansen tells you, it's soon okay to be angry, Laura.
Sarah, yeah, probably. Yeah, thank you.
Is that Sarah Hansen?
I think because she's a volunteer of whole Washington. She lives in I think it's Sarah. She's one of the craftivists of our coalition, and and she's seen all the.
I'm hearing one of her crafting. This is Sarah's.
I think we have every right to be angry at our representatives for not listening to us and supporting what we want.
Absolutely.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to be almost continuously angry the way things are going.
Well,
Georgia says they're also repeating right-wing talking points like the Vermont single-payer plan failed when it was never
Yeah.
even implemented. Yes,
yep.
of course. And when the consultant on the plan was also one of the major designers of the Affordable Care Act in the first place. So he was definitely against the idea of single payer. They did have a single payer consultant in there from Taiwan as well, but I don't think Shumlin was listening to him.
We actually have a volunteer who lives in Vermont that helps us out quite a bit.
Yeah.
He helps us with letters to the editor.
Who's your volunteer from Vermont?
Oh, what is his name?
I don't know how I'm blanking his name out.
I know Walter. What's Walter's last name?
Oh, at least you got his first name, and Georgia will put that in the comments. But it'll
Yeah,
appear
and
at
he
the end
actually
of-
said that one of the reasons they didn't get it passed is because they had a Republican governor at the time.
Yeah.
I thought Peter Shumlin was a Democrat.
I think I'll have to check with him. I thought they had a Republican. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll have to check with him. But he's a strong volunteer and advocate for it with us, and he actually helps us with op-eds and shows up at our meetings at our LDs to stand up against our representatives and supporting
I
health.
think he might be a Democrat because previously was Progressive Party.
Maybe so. Maybe they just didn't have enough support.
He was a Dem.
Yeah, Peter Elliot Shumlin, born March 24th, 1956, is an American politician from Vermont. He was a member of the Democratic Party.
So they must not have had enough support for it. Or
It was
wasn't
previously
well-written.
was held by a Progressive Party candidate.
Yeah, he served as the governor of Vermont from 2011 to 2017. He was first elected in 2010 and was reelected to a second term in 2012. So anyway, now he's at the Institute of Politics at Harvard. Yeah, he did famously employ a consultant whose name is, I think, actually Gruber. Okay, is the name of the consultant, and he was quite famous at the time for his work on the Affordable Care Act. It was later found that in some of his testimony before Congress that he lied, and then that kind of ruined his reputation. But that happened after he gave his advice to Shumlin, and Shumlin decided on the basis, okay, of his advice that the Vermont plan for single payer was not financially feasible. I mean, I think that's a case where if they had gone to Jerry Epstein for the estimates, the verdict, would have come out completely
Jerry
different.
Friedman.
It's just,
Well, anyway, and I don't know that I needed to go this far into, I don't want to say rehashing, but I don't know that I had really spoken out quite clearly and forcefully why the last several months became very not okay, because we being whole Washington and coalition partners have worked incredibly hard over the last several years, both offline and on, to create a solidarity model of organizing, because the state versus national have been pitted against each other and siloed for years. And we've worked very hard to change that narrative. And so you're down right.
And I think you've been very successful actually in changing that narrative among most sensible people.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, I have to say that. Just in other words,
you're here, and a lot of people are here. So yeah, there's also something to be said for Lori. You can't win them all. Now shut up and move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear you've been subjected to an ideological attack.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, and it's not actually an ideological attack that is shared by most of the MMT people. I don't
doesn't seem so. No.
Solana Dell says, same with the one town hall I attended with centrist Dean Phillips of the Minnesota 3rd. He had us write questions on cards. Yeah. That's the latest thing. And Shane says KRTD Medium, Laura Fielding and Joe Firestone are being tweeted at by Professor Jim Jordan, who's claiming this was already tried 173 years ago in Egypt or some shit. Okay, this fellow, Professor Jim Jordan, is a troll. I have no idea whether he's a professor or whether he even exists as a professor, but
Professor BS, I say.
He's been trolling our stuff for some time. He's kind of funny, actually. When he comes on, I sort of laugh at it and joke.
I just go at Joe Firestone. Now that's my new. If I'm ever in question about someone's legitimacy, I just like at Joe Firestone.
Well, thank you so much, Laura.
You're probably getting sick of being added so much at this point, but that's everyone.
No.
Everyone has that experience of me on Twitter. It's
Thanks, Laura. You've been carrying me on Twitter. You'll at
me.
me, and I'm not on there enough, but I get like these followers and stuff because of you just throwing me in there. So just thank you for bringing me along in that.
Okay, good.
I give all that credit to you. I go on every once in a while and say, "Oh, look at
there's
that.
50,000 notifications." Oh dear.
So Shane says that Jim Jordan was claiming that state-based Medicare for all was tried in Egypt 1,700 years ago or something. That's
a good comparison. We're just like 17 years ago.
Yeah, we're just like 700 years ago in Egypt, right?
Nothing's changed.
Oh, and of course, don't forget that they had states in Egypt 1,700 years ago.
Right.
I'm going to have to ask my friend Sharon, who's our technical guy, because he's from Egypt.
Yeah.
They might have this contention between this. Should they have state health?
He probably knows that 1,700 years ago they had no such thing because they were an empire, and empires don't have states.
Exactly.
And Canada's really trying to get rid of theirs, I see, and all these other countries who have, some sort of a single payer taking care of their citizens are all trying to get rid of it because it's so bad. Yeah.
Hey, I spoke with many of Canadians and people from other countries that were in line that couldn't sign our petition but strongly supported it, and they said we like our health care, and it's just, they said it's a shame that your country doesn't support and doesn't have it.
They love their health care in Canada, don't they?
I talked to one of my stepbrother's family members who lives up in Canada, and she said, yeah, of course we have to wait for appointments, but not if it's an emergency. But we here in the United States already have to wait for appointments. If you want to see a
yes,
specialist,
I know.
wait over a month.
We know we have to wait for appointments, and the average wait time in Canada, from what I understand, is roughly 20 minutes. And the average wait time here in the United States is much higher.
Yes, it is.
Than 20 minutes. Yeah, I'm an inconvenient guy. I tend to study these numbers. And I'm always talking about or asking for the numbers, when people tell me something. Just a skeptic, I guess.
Well, it helps put things in perspective, getting those numbers.
Exactly.
It certainly can. And Lana Dell says we should share onepayerstates.org. Agreed.
Everybody join onepayerstates.org. You can find them on Facebook, and they have their website too, right?
Yeah,
yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yeah. They have a website as well.
And also, let's always make sure that we're, just say Laura butt out. Not everything has to be perfect, and there's always dynamics to fix. There's always.
Washington really needs to share all of its stuff with one payer states. Because I think you really have a model that can be used in most states.
Yeah, in terms of the model. Yeah,
I think they have. I think they've been very open about what we're doing here and trying to get more states kind of doing the same thing. So I think that is.
I definitely think that's another, maybe Georgia will make a comment if she's still on. Maybe she'll comment about, because she had a very, very close interface with one payer states, and I definitely think she's done a lot for. Certainly, she's offered that help. I think it's more a question of one payer states sharing whole Washington out as a model. So I'd like to just kind of flip that narrative just slightly.
Yeah, that's probably the right way to flip it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that flip, Laura.
So Shane offers, there's no reason someone can't run as a Democrat and say outright, quote, I'm only running as a Democrat because I have to, unquote.
True.
Shane, I think Jason Cole said as much the other day on here.
Yeah.
We like those outspoken ones. You know, like I said, we don't discriminate on parties, and that even means we don't discriminate on the Dems running. You know, it really is truly about policy and, you know, having that voice to push it. Use that pulpit for good.
Yeah.
Yes, and I entirely agree. It's about the policies, what people are willing to commit to and what they're willing to fight for.
Yeah.
And Shane says, there's also no reason the progressives who win as Dems have to stay at Dems.
So true.
So true.
Yeah, he says it doesn't matter if they're only there for one term. If about 20 of the Democrats were suddenly to change to the Green Party tomorrow, I think that would make a really big difference, okay, in Congress. And it would also change the Green Party. I know that a lot of people don't care for the Green Party in this way or that way, you know, the other way. But I think the Green Party has many fine people in it. And if you added 20 Congress people to the already fine people who are in the Green Party, you'd start getting things fermenting a little and changing a little in the Green Party. But, you know, people like Howie Hawkins, you know, Madeline Hoffman, you know, also someone like a Margaret Flowers, they're really terrific people. There's no getting around that.
Right. And the thing that I hear about the Green Party and why people are, you know, turned off to it now is just because of, from what I understand, the organizing piece. There hadn't been really focused on those local positions, running for local offices, running for legislative districts, running for Congress. It's really been more of just a presidential run, and it's hard to build up that momentum. You know, we've got to seep into all these smaller places to really come out as a big, you know, number, and they hadn't been focused on that. So I think that's where people are getting turned off.
Yeah, they've been in existence for such a long time and have made only a very small amount of progress. That's the record. I think that's why people are turned off to them. Okay, at this point, it's kind of a shame because now the time has really come for their policies.
Right.
The best Green New Deal platform that was laid out by any politician was laid out by Howie Hawkins in this last election. He wasn't talking about spending $3 trillion on a Green New Deal, or $6 trillion on a Green New Deal, or $10 trillion on a Green New Deal, or $16 trillion on a Green New Deal. He was talking about spending $42 trillion on a Green New Deal.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is realistic. That is what it's going to cost, or even more than that.
Well, I recommend if people get a chance to go listen to Jill Stein's interview with Brianna Joy Gray, because it was actually pretty informative.
Yes, I saw that interview. Yeah. I thought that was very informative too. Yeah. And I didn't mean not to mention Jill Stein. I think she's a very good person too.
And just as a really quick, another shout out to, because there's such a wealth of reasons why organizations all over the United States should hopefully be inspired by Whole Washington's model, is because we have friendly relations with all these different parties because they're out gathering signatures for the cause that we care about. So, you know, like we had Green Party of Washington members and People's Party and Progressive Party I know we had members from each of those different state parties at our action in Tacoma, and Democrats. Like, we had all those different people represented just in that, like, humble but solid sized crowd. And we know it. And we got the photo receipts. We have the live in-person organizing receipts. So I know that all of us, like, when a Future to Believe in comes up with a slate of candidates and it makes sense in a particular district for the organization to endorse Green Party member this, and over here, Progressive Party this, and then People's Party, they could do it that way. We can choose by district. Hey, where's the kind of energy at? Oh, there's a lot of energy in this area for this party. We built up this kind of solidarity around the issues.
Yes.
And another reason why to build up organizations like Whole Washington, because it tends to bring people together and not see, oh, I don't like the Green Party. Oh, I really love the Green Party. They're out gathering signatures for Whole Washington. Mm-hmm. And same thing, People's Party was out gathering signatures before we suspended. So
yes,
throw that out there.
So Shane Kaufman says, as much as I support candidates who are progressives, I can't bring myself to give any more money to any Democratic candidates till they start fighting like they promised. I'm cutting off my money. I wanted to raise that because we had a similar situation with respect to with AOC. She's not in our district, but I have a certain sentimental attachment to that district, because I was brought up there, as it happens, many, many, many years ago. But I was excited when she won, for my old home district. And so we had been just, sending in a little bit of money here and there for quite a long time. Then she decided to send some of the money she had accumulated to centrist candidates. I don't know who advised her to do that, but we immediately dropped our contributions.
You're not the only one. I saw a lot of people really just disheartened. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there was no way. I mean, obviously, I know legally it was hers to give that money away, but from a moral standpoint, oh, no. No. I mean, none of us would have touched any of those candidates that she was giving money to. So this was a real breach of confidence. It's a breach of trust. Mm-hmm. A very serious breach of trust.
Yeah, I completely agree with your the person who just posted that. I'm going to be very selective of who I donate my money to.
Yeah, me too. I am very selective. At this point.
Yep. Yeah.
And mostly I donate for specific and very targeted purposes, and with respect to groups that are actually doing something. Yeah. I ignore all those fundraisers that say, "Oh, we have a vote that's coming up on this, this week, and give us some money so we can afford to make those votes." What? If those votes are coming up this week, then you don't need my money. You can't possibly schedule any ads or anything like that. So take your vote, then we'll see how you take that vote, and then if we like what you do, maybe then we'll give you a contribution.
I mean, my candidate down here that I'm supporting for city council, she was out we were putting signs together of her signs last night. She was actually helping us. She was doing the work with us, alongside us.
That's quite appropriate.
Yep. Yes. She's the only candidate down here that's putting up her own signs with her team.
Sounds like a good candidate.
Yep, and she's the first candidate of color on our city council.
Woman.
Yep, first woman of color that would be on our city council ever. Wow. In Vancouver.
So Shane says, I definitely like to start doing some interviews, possibly a panel. So Shane is saying that he'd like to have panels from the movement, from the Red Berets in Whole Washington on KRTD Media. and that he'd like to start doing some interviews. Now, these interviews are appearing on KRTD Media anyway, because KRTD Media picks up my stuff. But there's a further opening to KRTD Media through Shane. That's what he's saying.
Beautiful.
Nice.
He would like to do interviews.
More media, the better, man.
Exactly.
I know we're not getting the established media crap, so we need to band together as independent media all across the nation and really push it out everywhere.
Exactly.
You bet we do. So KRTD Media says, John, I'm excited for our meeting tomorrow with Lisa and DJ. I've come up with some really interesting ideas and can't wait to discuss them. Okay, I'm happy to discuss them too, Shane. I'll see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Lana says, yes, Bernie won 2016 caucus by about 70%. Now we have an open primary. Still caucus for other issues, but not to choose the primary candidate for POTUS. 2020, Biden won overwhelmingly. To be continued. And Lisa says, go Georgia. Let's see if we have some others that are significant. Kay says, okay, guys, I need to go to bed. I can't stay up until 1 a.m. tonight. Great discussion. Love you all. We love you too, Kay. Jeff Denton says 116 countries that we know about. Jeff says, you and me both check the numbers, Joe. Seeing the numbers frozen at 70% of all Americans supporting Medicare for all for 4 straight years is very disconcerting, especially during a pandemic. I entirely agree. Those numbers must be fixed. I'm not sure why anyone would trust the people that give us the numbers. Yeah. Jeff Denton says, be there for 1 term except for the loyalty pledge that nobody ever talks about and doesn't want anyone to know about. FFS. FFS, yeah. And Shane says, I have relationships with most of the state and local Green parties. A lot of them didn't have local candidates, but had the local parties. That's interesting. And Jeff says we had 4 days' notice, and we filled the Tacoma Dome for Bernie Sanders when he came.
Yes, we did.
That must have been exciting, right?
It was beautiful. So I was chair of our Revolution Washington at the time, and once we heard he was coming, I just threw out a thanks. I knew we'd be a part of it. Like, who wants to help volunteer at this thing? And within a day, I had hundreds of people signed up wanting to do stuff. So we were out there early, and we had shirts out there, and we just, got organized, and we just ran the show. It was beautiful. It was packed.
He had to have an overflow.
Yeah, we opened up
people outside because they couldn't get everybody in.
We're talking about 4 days of notice and about 2 to 3 days of actually being there just to get it done. People were ready still in 2020. Those numbers, again, I just, because of all the shenanigans, it really screwed us here in Washington State.
Yeah, he would have won if we would have still had a caucus, and they knew that.
Were they rigging the machines in Washington State?
Well, I can't see. This is something I want to have happen in Washington. I want all of our machines to be. I want to know which ones are proprietary and which ones are not. There hasn't been any blatant things that we can call out, but there's been times in the past where certain races always came out with a certain percentage of their. There was always just like clockwork. There's something. I really want to check out those proprietary machines. Who has them, where they're at, and get rid of them. Because I don't think there's any need in our democracy to have anything proprietary. If we are not able to see something as the people and really believe in it, it should not be there. So we can't say definitively, but it doesn't feel like it's legit either. Do you know what I mean?
Since Biden had no presence here at all in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
We actually had 50 to 100 people out canvassing just down here in Clark County every weekend.
Well, we all know that it had a very, very marked impact how long that Elizabeth Warren stayed on the ballot, and that was all by design. And I'm perfectly happy to
Yeah,
call
we
that
know
out.
that's true, but we also know that in California, there was a great discrepancy between the exit polling, okay, and the actual vote. It was
Yeah.
way outside what was a statistical possibility. And that happened in quite a number of states. It happened, for example, even where Bernie won. Well, he won in California,
Yep.
but he won by only 8 points in California.
And if he would have wanted a higher margin, he probably could have stayed in.
Well, for example, the exit polls were showing him winning by up to 20 points. If he had won by 20 points, yeah, things would have been a lot different. But also in New Hampshire, there was a very suspicious thing. The particular precincts, okay, that were won by Buttigieg, okay, in New Hampshire, all had the same voting machines in them. And there were discrepancies between the exit votes there, okay, and the polling. I'm sorry, the actual vote, okay, and the exit polling that were also way out of bounds, and strange things going on in Minnesota too.
Well, look at was it Iowa that had the first caucus?
Yes,
Look what happened there.
That was very squirrely.
Look what
they really
decided to use a
important.
program that nobody knew of, and we were actually watching the caucus on multiple stations, including progressive stations, and what we were seeing was not matching up with the votes.
Yes.
Well, it was really important that they didn't that they properly rigged that one and didn't let Bernie run away with that. So
they rigged both. They rigged 2016 and 2020. I mean, their thumbs were on the scale in many different ways.
Yes.
Yeah, they were rigged votes, and then people go to court over it, and the courts say they have a right to rig the primary votes.
Yeah.
Right.
Are they kidding? I mean, that's
private
fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What they're saying is because the party is a corporation, it has the right to commit fraud on its members.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's disgusting, and more people should be pissed off about our election system.
We don't have a democracy.
No, we need to go back to, paper ballots, hand counted. We need, or really make sure these machines have no proprietary entities, and do a blockchain if you're going to use anything, so we can really see if there's something out of sorts way before it gets too late. But our whole election system as a whole is a fraud. It just,
I'll just and there may be a few more comments. I have to interject at this point and say thank you very much, Joe, and thank you to you, Rhonda and Leah, for welcoming me to be a part of this this live stream as well. And I need to sign off now because otherwise the house is going to be bombarded with noise.
I know I'm out there too. I love you, Laura. Thank you.
I love you too.
Thank you very much for coming, Laura, and thank you for your
See you in November, Laura.
Yes, I will.
In November.
Yay.
Right. November 19th.
November 19th,
2:30.
All right. Love you. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. So, Shane Coughlin says, you can give all of them my email and my assistant's email if they're interested in scheduling interviews or setting up panels, and he leaves his emails on YouTube.
I'm definitely interested.
Beautiful.
Cool. And KRTD Media says, perhaps a Red Berets panel on the next U.S. Solution Summit, but just an idea. I'm very sure that Laura would like that idea very much.
Yes.
And we can all talk about the solution of fighting on all fronts for Medicare for all. And we got a lot of strategy to talk about with respect to that, why that strategy is a really good strategy. And anyone on the stream watched Bernie Blackout? That kind of shows my anger and a lot of people's Well, I think we've all seen the blackout of news, okay, against Bernie at the time, if that's what you were talking about. Anyway, I'm not quite sure. You need to be a little more specific about that. Shane, he says, I may need to watch that again to reawaken some of my anger. So he's talking about a specific live stream. So you use that when you want to stay angry. Is that it, Shane? And Lisa says, love you, Laura. Yeah, we know that. And Shane says, you can find it on Prime Video. He says there's a documentary called Bernie Blackout. Thank you, Shane.
Well, thank
Good
you.
to know.
I think we have just about covered all the comments, okay, at this point. So Leah and Rhonda, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you,
I
Joe.
appreciate
It's
this.
wonderful being here. It's nice to finally meet you.
And it was nice to meet the two of you, too. It really, really was. In fact, I am having a wonderful time doing this particular series. I really
We're
have
excited about all of
a
it.
great time.
You're helping so much on putting, more eyes onto what's going on. And so we appreciate it that
Exactly.
you're going through all of
Okay,
this.
well, thank you. And hopefully we can put a lot more eyes on it as well through the other openings that KRTD Media is going to give us.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Joe. You have a
Indeed,
nice evening.
let's do it. You too, ladies. I'll see you next time. Okay, Rhonda, good night to you. Okay, so I guess we're at good night time, folks. Lisa said, great show, everyone. Yeah, I thought it was too. And Dolores says, good night, everyone. Thank you, Dolores. Thanks, everybody, for sharing. And I will see you soon. I will see you on Tuesday. I don't know yet if I'm going to have a Red Beret series show on Tuesday. I'm trying to get Rebecca Parson to come on. I have Daniel Lead coming on Wednesday. He's a doctor and a Red Beret, and I think he's going to have some very interesting things to say. Okay, as for Rebecca Parson, she has the choice of coming Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday now. And after she tells me what she wants to do, then I'll schedule a third show in the Red Beret series for next week. At this point, it's looking like I might have one of my news shows on Tuesday. And if I do, there was a comment that was made here much earlier, and that is, how about talking about some reconciliation news or some debt ceiling news? How about that? If it's just me on Tuesday, I will certainly be talking about that. If it's not just me on Tuesday, then it will probably be just me on Thursday. And I will talk about that on Thursday. Okay, and by the way, I did do a show not too long ago on debt ceiling crises. It was, I think, sometime in June, because I was anticipating the debt ceiling crisis, okay, at that time. And I went over the various ways around the debt ceiling crisis. So you can kind of look up that show if you want to on YouTube. And I think, as I recall, that show was a pretty good one. So I'll see you next week, and good night all. Thank you for coming, Lisa. And thank you for coming, everybody.